got you covered. It's gonna be heartaches and pain. God knows your name. It's gonna be I wish I had some church folk here. You got it all? Hey! Clap your hand like that, everybody. Through every situation, God's got you covered. It's gonna be heartaches and pain. God knows your name. It's gonna be.
Hello and welcome to yet a very special Sweet Holy Spirit edition here at the greatest church in the world, the Sweet Holy Spirit Church of Chicago, as we are here to commemorate 50 years. It is our 50th year birthday celebration, if you will, our existence here. And we couldn't cap this off without talking to the one and only, our pastor, the Honorable Larry D. Trotter, Bishop of the Lord's Church. How you doing, Bishop?
I am blessed, Mr. Mayor, as I named you years ago.
Yeah, you named a lot of us a lot of things around here. It's been a long time. You've served 40 plus years here now. And as we commemorate 50 years, there's a lot of memories. But the first thing I want to say, when we're out of town, many of the members of this church could be out of town. And if you're talking to churchy people around the country and you're telling me you're from Chicago, 25 years ago, they would have mentioned Fellowship and some other churches. Now they mention Sweet Holy Spirit. How's Bishop Trotter doing? Oh, they have my favorite songs there. Oh, I came there to worship. The setting and the spirit was high. When you go around the country and know that you have the landmark church here in Chicago, and there are still others, it must make you feel proud.
Makes me feel proud, but also, Sean, sometimes I'm shocked about how God has taken us to a place, and I know it's true that more people will always know me than I know them, because I preached to 30,000 one time and then 60,000 one time in Detroit.
And the tens of thousands has walked through these doors.
And the tens of thousands, we would never know, this what blows my mind, how many people over these 43, 44 years came through those doors, got a word. How many people watched the telecasts? Or how many people listened to the broadcast when it was Sunday night, Friday night? So, now when I travel, just even on yesterday, a guy stopped me at a restaurant and says, Bishop Trotter, is that you? He said it twice. He said, Bishop Trotter, is you? I said, no, just Clay. I look, I got a distinctive walk, but I thank God, because a lot of churches start and stop. Ministries fizzled out, but we still have a strong name.
Yeah, and people who have been delivered here, you still run into in airports, in grocery stores. And although their travels may have gone beyond the walls of the church, they never forget their foundation here.
Never forget at your wedding. And I got off the plane in Cancun, and this young man come and grabbed me around the neck and accosted me, I said, because I was totally shocked. I didn't know who he was from Adam. But then when we got to begin to talk, and he told his story about how at Sweet Holy Spirit, God delivered him from crack cocaine. And he needed to tell me that. And what a joy it was. I've had that happen. One time I was in the meat place up on Lake Street. Can't call the name of it now. But I was in there, and a guy came up to me and gave me his testimony. He said, buy whatever you want to buy. And I bought steaks and neck bones and the whole 9 yards. And his story was deliverance. And you could go here any Sunday, pass the mic, and talk to people who, have had some measure of deliverance or healing, how they came out of this and came out of that. And they thank God for that service, whatever service it was, at Sweet Holy Spirit.
There's sort of like a trifold formula here. It's Sweet Holy Spirit Church, it's Bishop Larry D. Trotter, and then it's the choirs, the music ministry, and we'll get into that later. You've taken Sweet Holy Spirit, that trifold, if you will, on the road. Through how many countries have you preached?
17.
17 countries. You've taken Sweet Holy Spirit all over the world. And it has become a brand of many sorts. You know, when you see Bishop Paul Morton, you think of Greater St. Stephen in New Orleans. I know new generations, but in New Orleans, you think of T.D. Jakes, you think the Potter House, and you think Bishop Larry Trotter, you think Sweet Holy Spirit. To be captured in that small select few of church names around the country must make you feel proud, because you served now nearly 44 years and you've seen a lot. And to still have that respect, the church name still respected, your name still respected, the choir and their history still respected and honored, that must make you feel good.
Makes me feel wonderful, and whatever I get as far as kudos and applause, I don't deserve it. Because I think a lot of times we as pastors, we fail God, some of the things I went through. But I thank God every day that the train has not been derailed. All of the things that go on, and these people say, oh my God, that's Sweet Holy Spirit. That's Bishop Trotter, whether it's on the choir scene, or like you say, or Larry D. Trotter Ministries, or Climbing Higher. We had all of those phases.
A lot of branches.
A lot of branches that came out of here that we now put them all under the caption of Spirit Nation. They can't keep up with it. Utopia Music Group, all of the great people that came through here musically and launched their ministries here. So it makes me feel wonderful. I try to stay humble with it, but it makes me feel wonderful, especially when I go somewhere and people refer to Sweet Holy as having legendary status. Any church that existed, one writer says, 35 or more years has legendary status. So this church has been in existence since 1974, 50 years, legendary, and then soon to be 44 for me, which also is another stamp of legendary church.
I was looking at TBN and I saw Patrick Winfield, and I said, wow, he came from right out of Sweet Holy Spirit Church. He's doing a good job serving under T.D. Jakes, but he confessed to his foundation, his principles, his teachings, church protocol he learned serving under you. Then I flipped the channel and I see on the podcast, Vershawn Mitchell is also confessing, hey, I was at Sweet Holy Spirit. I was given the freedom and the autonomy to go ahead and be who I wanted to be in the music industry. As long as he was captured under God and he's serving God, you gave him the fortitude to do what he had to do. You talked to Ricky Dillon, you talked to Mark Hubbard, so many, Rick Robinson, so many have come from, I call this sound stage, and you've launched many careers. Talk about Sweet Holy Spirit and music and what captured the world as it relates to Sweet Holy Spirit and music.
I think that when I came here, they already had a strong choir. Just hadn't been highlighted. They may have been small in number, but back in Virginia was singing, Harvey Bass, the Holmes family, had a strong choir. So we built on that. And in the early days, in the early 80s, Lonnie Mack came, who is up in age now, but Lonnie was so powerful and still regarded as one of the best vocal trainers. So Lonnie came in and began to teach parts, and 4-part harmony, 5-part harmony. And you remember we did the McDonald's Gospel Fest, and that was a turning point. And she said, lift him up above the earth, above the moon, above the stars, above the Jupiter and Mars. James directed as we got further. We come to lift him up. And so musically, it's always been an uphill climb. Those first projects, of course, the late Andrew Moore, along with Mark Hubbard, came and told me that Ty Scott Records wanted to record us. And those first projects went to the charts. Songs like The Lord is Blessing Me Right Now, or Virginia Singing Prayer Will Move It. So we became a church that was noted for good gospel music, but at the same time there was a balance, because some churches have good music but did not have good preaching, or didn't have a structure, but God blessed us to have both. And so in the Gospel Roundup, which is one of the books that the gospel artists celebrate, talk about new releases or what have you.
Right.
They have in there, and I've watched it over the past 20 years, churches to attend when visiting Chicago. And some of the hotels did the same thing. Because back, you go to hotels back in the day, and they'd have a list, but it basically was all Catholic churches. You're going to such town, visit here and there. But we made the list, and I think we have continued to make many lists, or just like you said, people talking. And so, well, you're in the Christian world, you're in the gospel music. When you go to Chicago, where you go? Fellowship. So it's taken another turn for the greater under Pastor Sharp. You go to Fellowship, Trinity, Jeremiah Wright, Otis Moss, and of course, I mean, there are others, but Sweet Holy Spirit is on that list of where to go when you come to Chicago. And back when we were doing 4 services a Sunday, you didn't miss it musically. 7:30, 9:30, 11:30, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock broadcast.
Yeah. And you kept the nighttime broadcast going when it was declining in the late 80s and the 90s. You kept it afloat and kept it alive, because on the south side it was you and Willie James Campbell, on far south side, and then you had Fellowship and some others in the near south side, and then you had a few west side churches, but it wasn't a lot of churches that could offer a 6 p.m. service, and you coalesce individuals from all over the south and west sides that would come to Sweet Holy Spirit. Some got saved at 6 o'clock at night. Talk about the evening service and what really sparked you to bring that about for Sweet Holy Spirit.
Shall be like him in the evening tide, old hymn of the church. I like that. I just like night service. But then in studying, all of us stand on somebody's shoulders. So as a young minister, I watched in this city how powerful evening services were. 4 o'clock was New Nazareth under the late Reverend J.E. Hopkins. 5 o'clock was Hyde Park Bible Church under Bishop Chester Beatty. 6 o'clock at night, and we took that hour, was the late Gordon Humphrey Sr. in Shiloh Baptist Church. When I first got engaged with Shiloh, they were on 48th and Wabash, and then to 40 over on Dorchester, 48 in Dorchester, on to 105th. 7 o'clock, we had Pastor Apostle Richard D. Hinton, Mother Meacham, night service. 8 o'clock originally back in the day was Omega, but then after Omega went off the air, my friend you just mentioned, I got goosebumps thinking Willie James Campbell, and how even sometimes we'd preach for each other. He'd do my 6 o'clock and I'd go back over there at 8 o'clock. Memories. And then of course 9 o'clock everybody went to Fellowship under Reverend Evans.
And then there was that 11 o'clock thing.
Oh yeah. So 9 o'clock was Fellowship or Progressive under the Alfords. And then 10 o'clock was Fountain of Life with Marvin Yancey and then T.L. Barrett at New Life. But then 11 o'clock, you had Cosmopolitan in one area, you had First Church of Deliverance in another, and in the west side, you had Milton Brunson and Christ Tabernacle.
And a lot of people in those churches at 11 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah, they packed. I remember. And so I knew that if First Church of Deliverance could have 150 choir members at 11 o'clock at night, when the Lord put in my heart to start the evening service, I asked the Lord to do the same thing.
Yeah, this affection you have with black church history in Chicago, because you have kept that afloat as well, using the float in 2 segments now, but you have kept that alive and vibrant. You've often regarded and honored some of the black, I call them the black meccas, if you will, of the black church movement. You've had those individuals come here, you've honored them, you developed the drive-by blessings where you would go into a historic black church to ensure that those members know that their church, their foundation, and their history was still respected and regarded. What's your fascination with that? I mean, I know Dorothy Trott allowed you to go across the city and visit all those churches, but what's really your fascination with that history?
It's, Sean, it's a part of who I am. You know, I was raised in the city on State Street, and a lot of those popular churches were on State Street. You get on the State Street bus, you can go to Omega, you can go to Robert's Temple, you go to Red Harvest, and you get on and get off 43rd, you can go to First Church of Deliverance. So I just began to take notes over the years and saw how God was doing it. So when we got big enough to go back and say thank you, and the drive-by blessing thing took place, and at that point, you know, we had a strong men's ministry, and I said, okay, I need 50 men to go with me, and we're gonna go to Dr. Fluker's church because their heat is off.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And we go to that church house.
The Heart of Roseland.
Heart of Roseland, 32 East 113th Place, and go there because we had become bigger and be a blessing to smaller churches. Right. And I kind of look at that as major because not a lot of people that give back. But I also look at it as it was one of the things that a lot of people weren't doing and have not done. So the history is in my heart. Somebody asked me, say, why don't you write a book on black church in Chicago or in America?
It could be a bestseller.
You think?
Yeah, it could be a bestseller. Before we move on, because we've gotten into the music ministry, we've gotten into the popularity of the church and the popularity of some of the individuals that have come out of the music ministry. But there are some pillars in this particular church we call Sweet Holy Spirit that are responsible for the evolution of Sweet Holy Spirit. I know in a different segment you had the opportunity to interview the very first Lady of Sweet Holy Spirit, Mother Hawkins, and then we could go to Bernice Franklin, Mother Flowers, Barbara Jean Anderson, and so many other what I call institutions within the institution. Talk about some of those individuals who help you sort of cultivate the brand, if you will. Let's start with Mother Flowers.
Mother Geraldine Flowers to us was what Mother Teresa was to the Catholic Church, or what Mother Teresa was to the Catholic Church in Calcutta. Mother Flowers became for Sweet Holy Spirit. I still feel a void in the loss of those people that you mentioned. But Mother Flowers, I don't think we could have done, and I'm going to talk to CJ and some of the other younger people about the youth retreats, Mother Flowers, Vacation Bible School with Mother Flowers. But her main heartbeat until the day she closed her eyes was community and outreach.
Yeah.
This woman would take bags and boxes of food to what was then the Robert Taylor homes in the middle of the night. When you think of Mother Flowers, you can't miss 103rd Street on that corner.
Care Center.
The Care Center. C for counseling, A for activities, R for resources, E for education. And Mother Flowers ran that. If you came to the GED class, you had to get to know Jesus. You came to Cocaine Anonymous or Al-Anon or Alcoholic Anonymous, had to get to know Jesus. And then if you came to receive a basket or bag of food, Mother Flowers was going to give you no food without, baby, do you know the Lord? And she would talk to you about Jesus, and I want you to be saved. I don't want your stomach just to be filled. And what a remarkable woman of God.
And was recognized throughout this city, not just Sweet Holy Spirit. And I know there were some publications that had featured her, if you remember.
Yeah, one in particular was when the heat, and I got heat coming now to say, but when the heat storm hit Chicago, and the funeral homes had bodies stacked up trying to get ready for having a funeral. Bless them, God. I always say bless them, God, when they hear a siren, because they never know where they're going. Mother Flowers came and asked us, why can't we open our churches as cooling centers? Because we're living, people was dying. Mother Flowers also came and said we need to build a coalition of people that would check on the seniors. And that thing went viral. There's a group out of, I want to say Boston, over that way, that came and did a whole documentary on how Chicago churches responded to the heat crisis. Mother Flowers, House Chicago Church, she did a partnership with Chicago Food Depository, did a partnership with Catholic Charities. But there never was a time from the beginning of her time with us till the time she went to heaven that Mother Flowers stopped feeding people. She's on her sick bed telling Corliss and others, y'all got to make sure they get them boxes of love. You know, Thanksgiving's coming, Christmas coming. So that legacy, that foundation of outreach has been there and always will be there. You talk about her sister, a lot of people don't know these sisters, but her sister, Bernice B. Franklin. I think I heard you say it once, that nobody could write and read a resolution
like Bernice Franklin.
like Bernice B. Franklin.
Yeah.
And
She had great penmanship as well.
Oh yeah, and see, Bernice retired early from the Board of Education. She talked to her late husband, James.
Now, you talked to her late husband,
Yeah,
James.
well, we talked to him, asked her about being an assistant to me, and we didn't know about staff.
Right.
He's the first full-time staff person, and he consented to give her the grace to do that, and it was a long time before we were really able to pay her. But she did it and ran the office with excellence.
Speaking of which, we experienced a huge boom in attendance during that era where Miss Franklin had served under you, and you really didn't have a huge staff to pull it off initially. Their staff imploded later, but it was really her, Darnell Williams, and some others in the office, and we saw this tremendous growth. And just 4 or 5 people, clerically and administratively, took care of all the paperwork, had to transition from paper to electronic. And as we saw America evolve, we saw thousands of people walk through the doors, and all of their paperwork was submitted through these 3 or 4 individuals led by Bernice Franklin. And it was remarkable how someone, and she was an elder statesman at that point, but she adapted and she led a staff, and they got through it. And here we are today because we had a few individuals that had to quickly learn these new processes that came through.
They don't make them like that no more. Church office hours started at 9. Bernice Franklin was at her desk at 7:30. If I called and said, Frank, you come, I'm already here. I got the coffee made, Bishop. And you got to do boom, 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 boom. Pastor before Bishop. Everything that I needed to do was lined out. Everybody that was sick, she'd already contacted them, because back then, Tuesday, before we grew as big as we grew, Tuesday was my visitation day. So Monday was off day, Tuesday was visitation day and office day. Of course, Thursday was sermon day.
And she kept up with your busy travel
She kept me
commitment.
like this, kept me like that. Up until her retirement, I could say a name, and Bernice could tell you the church and the city. If I said Jerome Ross, she would say Tridestone, Columbus, Ohio. If I said Detroit, Michigan, she would say Greg Davis, Second Unity, or Charles Ellis. I mean, you had a list of these churches.
And these pastors knew who she was.
Oh yeah, when Bernice called, I said, Bernice, we're going to have convocation. I want to have Clarence McClendon, Noel Jones, Jackie McCullough, and Bernice had them back then in her Rolodex. And she would call them and say, well, this is Bernice Franklin. Hey, this is Franklin. They knew automatically from that voice that this was another voice of Sweet Holy Spirit.
Quasi, she was your first official spokesperson.
Absolutely. And no nonsense.
No nonsense.
No nonsense.
And a good Sunday school teacher.
And loved it. You know, she came out of Mount Joy. I know you remember Pastor Covington.
Yes.
But Bernice came out of Mount Joy to us, and I guess Bernice worked for me 30 years. Without fail, and brought the excellence to the office. So everybody that came after her were able to go back and say, oh, I learned this from Bernice. I learned that from Bernice. We're still using her template for resolutions. You know, flights, and when I got to be a frequent flyer on American, this woman was remarkable, and she could go and say, I got a new one now, so I can say the other one, flight number and the flight number and the advantage number, 6402CU2. Bernice just spit that out.
And you know, remarkably, and we got a lot more to cover, when it comes to your personal secretaries, three that really hit you in the eye, her, Bernice Franklin, Dorsharika Jefferson, and now Simone Darnell. Those are three mainstays, if you will, when you're thinking about trying to contact you.
And don't forget Elder Kim.
Kim Ingram, yeah.
Kim Ingram was there.
Yeah, you know. So those were the body of individuals you kept around you that kept Larry D. Trotter Ministries going afloat, especially beyond these walls. Let's talk about some of the larger families. And okay, we got to start with the Holmes family. We already know that. Talk about Deacon Walter Holmes and talk about his significance to you personally and that family. Because for our viewers, the Holmes family is the legendary, you know, let me start with protocol. The Hawkins family, and then there's the Holmes family. Holmes family being such a large presence.
I think that, I don't know if I've said this before, but Deacon Holmes was not just a deacon. To me, because I did not have a father figure in my life, he was also looked up to as a father. He's one of the chiefs of the village. And to go back to when I came here, here's a man who would work the Tony Pontiac through the week, and Sunday put on his church clothes and bring all 11 of his kids to church in that station wagon. Wow. And if they stayed all day, we had a 3:30 service, you could count on Deacon Holmes, the late mother Osalie Holmes, and the Holmes family. They were basically the foundation for the choir, was the Holmes family, the White family originally. And it grew beyond that. But Deacon Holmes was no nonsense. He cherished church. Nobody could pray like him.
No.
And he was a man who had very limited education, couldn't read for the most part. But when he got through praying, it's like he was sitting with Jesus.
Yeah.
And when he spoke at their family reunions or family gatherings, everybody listened. He was a patriarch of the family, but then he became a patriarch or father for the church. People when he walked in, he demanded a certain kind of response. His presence was most powerful.
Almost sort of like a spiritual military presence he had. And I haven't seen too many people that could really pull you to the side and talk to you firmly. You don't allow that. But Deacon Holmes was a grand exception to that. He wasn't afraid to use his wisdom to say, "Little Larry, come here."
And what a joy it was when we moved into 103rd Street, and a joy that was when we moved into 87th Street, here 86th.
And I was honored to see that the Lord had kept him here.
Kept him.
To see him walk through these doors.
Yeah, we got the pictures, and maybe perhaps we can show some of them. But he cut the ribbon at 103rd Street, and then he and my mother cut the ribbon here at 8621.
And he didn't know on that day there was a young man named Barack Obama that was here that day. And Deacon Holmes didn't know he would be shaking the 44th President of the United States' hand at that point.
Boy, we're in the halls of history.
Yes.
What a joy to have known this man. If he sang, if he prayed, or even if he gave advice. You remember the original men's ministry at Sweet Holy Spirit was called the Brotherhood. Now we's going to have a Brotherhood meeting. I want all the men's to meet us on Saturday. So you have all these people that are patriots of the church. A lot of them going to heaven now. Andrew Foster, Papa Gooch, Richard Jackson,
the ultimate usher, Richard Jackson,
and then of course Killer,
Edward
Mitchell.
Mitchell.
So he would call the names of these people, and they knew each other. So the list goes on and on.
And when you would travel to minister at other churches across the city, and that was the old tradition of the deacons walking in with you, that was such a strong presence of wise men walking in front of you, walking behind you, to your side. That had to make you feel very comfortable and insulated with God's best.
Oh man, it was wonderful, and I learned that from the late Reverend Clay Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get a chance to talk about some of the people that I looked up to, because we're still looking at these icons: Geraldine Flowers, Bernice Franklin, Walter Holmes, Deacon Holmes. Those men would line up. Mm-hmm. It was almost like Minister Farrakhan mm-hmm. and the Nation of Islam guys, yeah. FOI, would be with him. I then never knew that I would eventually have men who looked out for me. And it wasn't just on the surface.
Right.
You guys, you came in. And Joe Smith, you guys
Brady
came
Lyles,
in and were willing to take a bullet.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And but it started with
and you made some people mad around the city. We thought we was going to get those bullets at one time.
Yeah, I used to keep them mad.
Hey, we'll get into that in another segment. Can't go further. I know we got to talk about some iconic figures in your life, but there was a young man that we lost a few years ago, James Lott. And James was such an instrumental part of what went on in his music ministry. He could take a hammer and nail, or he could go in the bathroom and do plumbing. He would do everything, whatever it took. We owe some minutes here to talk about James Lott, the impact he had on this church, and you personally.
I think that James was born for his uniqueness, if there's such a word. He was unique in how he maneuvered, how he got around. Mm-hmm. I'm still angry with him for leaving here. I know that's the Lord's will.
Yeah.
But you kind of look at James Lott and Mother Flowers and say, how can Sweet Holy run?
Yeah.
As you said, he would be just as interested in making sure that the choir and the music people did well, and then turn around to do cosmetic stuff in the building, and then turn around when we had the Utopia showcases. Mm-hmm. James Lott, the late Rosalind Patton James Lott, we had a showcase one time in Kansas City with all the gospel artists.
Right.
James could spend money now, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
And y'all call y'all back here. I'm going to pay so-and-so. Who ever heard of choirs having Kansas City barbecue, popcorn stands, candy cane, cotton candy. All of this, just hear some choirs sing.
He believed in his spirit of excellence being broke.
And spin it. We go to the Stellas. We didn't have to hide under anybody, because James had us laid out from the time of arriving. Pastor can't get anybody kind of car. He would have fit with some of the people and things I ride around with here now, because he was concerned about image.
Yes.
And image was important to him. He lived it. Mm-hmm. The image of the choir, the sound of the music. Uniform. I mean, the choirs back then were uniform from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. They even had a season where they wore the same shoe. So, the whole choir decorum, which you don't see that a lot anymore. Matter of fact, you don't see many church choirs. But James Lott was committed to making sure that excellence was seen in every phase of ministry. And I think that God used James, and we named the Joshua joint after James, so it's now the James Lott Center of the Arts. But I think originally James, you say with Bernice and Flowers, those people that you mentioned, James caught the vision. So I'm gonna run with it. And he would say to me often, everything I'm doing, you taught me or told me how to do it.
And his true friendship to you was really evident when you had to make tough decisions budget-wise, and he would be impacted sometimes, but he never stopped doing what he did best, being involved and being engaged. And you wish you could have every member like a James Lott.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah. Larry D. Trotter, the pastor everyone is so familiar with, but outside these walls, you know, you're considered one of the now godfathers of the movement, the fathers of the movement, and so many young pastors gravitate to you. But you had some heroes that taught you protocol, heroes that taught you responsibility and how to be responsibility for masses of people. Let's talk about some of those.
Can you digress just a minute? Because
Sure.
you mentioned a name that I don't want to miss over, and that is Barbara Jean Anderson.
Oh my God. She would kill me in my sleep tonight.
Oh man, that Barbara Jean kept this church afloat financially, and she was just a jewel. If you didn't know her, you would be offended by how she talked to you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, she wanted to make sure that Sweet Holy Spirit and Bishop Trotter were at their best and had what they needed. And
Yeah.
so, you know, paved the way. Back when we had trustee boards and finance committees, Barbara Jean weathered all of that, trained new finance people, shopped for the church, made sure that the church was clean. And the
Strict
policies
disciplines
were-
on everything.
Policies were in place, insurance in place, and she did it again with a limited education.
Right.
So I do need to salute
Yes.
her as a
Barbara Jean Anderson had a PhD in common sense and getting things together. We could not have
niggerosity,
gone through the 80s and 90s with the growth spurt.
Hear my word, niggerosity.
Yeah.
She knew how to master those people that were addicted to niggerosity.
I made a mistake and corrected her one time. You were being consecrated. And she said, I know we got to get ready for the concentration. I said, Barbara Jean, it's consecrated. She didn't speak to me for a year. She said, well, you know what I meant. But I loved her, and when we would travel on the road with you, your guys, your security guys, she took good care of us. If you were staying in the 5-star, she didn't put us in Red Roof. We stayed in the 5-star as well. So love Barbara Jean, and I was proud that you allowed me and the family allowed me to speak at her funeral, and we miss her around here. Back to those iconic figures, and I know Clay Evans is at the top of that list, and I know Paul Morton. Talk about those two.
I don't think the history books on black church cross-denominational lines could be written without the Clay Evans. Clay Evans, and I guess I got a lot of, some of his mantle must have fallen on me, because Clay Evans didn't care about what people didn't agree with him on. He's the first one to publicly ordain a woman.
Yeah, your spiritual mother.
Mother Consuelo York, which I could be a whole nother chapter on Mother York and how she would teach us and pray and taught us prison ministry. Here's a man who, at the risk of being put out of the Baptist Convention, ordained this black woman. Here's a man that there was no such thing as drums in the Baptist church, who gets a whole set of drums and brings it in fellowship. Boom, 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 what a fellowship. And then here's a man, he and Apostle Hinton are the first two. All these people on radio and TV now, they're the first two. On Saturdays, they went on and got on TV and did, and telecasts were high. But Reverend Evans paved the way for so many, and a lot of people don't know today, a lot of stuff we do now is because of one of those fathers in the ministry. Reverend Clay Evans, Apostle Richard D. Hinton.
Yeah.
Those are kind of people. Of course, Bishop Paul S. Morton.
Those some real protocol pastors.
Man. Bishop Morton yet lives to tell the story of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship and how he was able, through the help of God, to bring all of us together. If somebody picked my brain and asked me, where did I learn this, where did I learn that, I could point to them. I learned deliverance under Richard D. Hinton. I learned fellowship and fellowship under Clay Evans, because as large as fellowship was, he was still a people person. And then I learned structure and time management under Paul Morton. We never had, back in the day, no precision timing. But Bishop Morton was a stickler
Yeah.
It'll stick it on time. He will have a fit when things didn't start or flow correctly. So there are others that I can go down the list, but as you mentioned, Reverend Clay Evans' imprint is on Chicago and the world, but in particularly Larry Trotter and Sweet Holy Spirit, as was Apostle Hinton.
You know, it amazes me because it's almost as if Dr. Clay Evans didn't do anything wrong, and I'm sure he had his challenges, but from women in ministry to his music ministry to his politics, he created a paradigm, if you will, for everyone to just follow through. And I think much of the politics and the media, because I mean, if we had social media and had access to publicists back in the 70s, he would have been bigger than Billy Graham.
Right.
You know, if you think about it that way. Even though he had a broadcast that was syndicated, went all over the country, with the magnitude of devices we have today, he would have been much larger. But you took much of that and embraced those gadgets.
Yeah.
And you took off.
Yeah. I never seen anybody could in this city could call a meeting and everybody stop and go. People call meetings, send letters or what have you back in the day, but Reverend Evans would sit and call pastors individually. Nadrata, I want you to come. Got to meet with this thing. I don't know what's going on with the mayor. It is no secret what God can do. Everybody stopped and went to hear what Reverend Evans was saying, united forces with him. Our city is void of that, and you know, some say, you know, that I've moved into that father status because we don't have many.
Those some
fathers.
big shoes to fill, though.
Yeah, but the Clay Evans era, I salute him and I salute his family who are yet here and stand on their shoulders.
And he allowed Minister Farrakhan to preach in his pulpit when that was forbidden, and he didn't care what the masses said. And that's the type of mentality that you developed. You just did what God told you and not worried about what others, human beings, would say.
Yeah, and Reverend Evans taught us that. And this whole thing with pastors and choirs, you know, Chicago was popular with it. Maceo Woods and Christian Tabernacle, Evelyn Davis and Trinity All Nations, Milton Brunson and Tommy's. But all of that music, Reverend Clay Evans and fellowship. A lot of people don't know that Clay Evans, you know, sang with old lady Lucy Lux and the Lux Singers. And, you know, he didn't mind telling his story about who he sang with and how he got. And so it just made sense later on to see that he became the godfather, not just in pastoring and preaching, but the godfather in music, along with First Church of Deliverance and Fellowship and those musicals. The man's worth and wealth is just beyond my imagination now.
In this last couple of minutes, I want to touch on two things real quick because we're trying to get as much in this segment. You and I'll sit down and possibly do another segment because it's 50 years, too many memories. But as I had forementioned, politics and media, how you brought those elements together, it had not been done in the paradigm to which you brought it to Chicago. I think you, Pastor Meeks, and Father Pfleger took advantage of politics and media. Talk about the importance of that, because now you see other churches doing it.
Yeah. Well, of course, a long time, Father Pfleger was probably the person that you saw out the most in community things. And I think we all learned early.
Yeah.
There had to be some kind of marriage, and you did a lot of this, I give you kudos, marriage between the media and the minister. Because a guy or girl could be doing a great work, but nobody knew outside of their circles.
Right.
And I think what Pastor Meeks, Father Pfleger, and I were able to do within these time, I don't know how many years Pfleger has been to St. Sabina, I can't really throw off right now how many times or years Meeks was at Salem. But we were able to become identified as community pastors. You knew that one of us was going to roll up their sleeve and enter into some fight here or there. And our churches, Sweet Holy Spirit 50 years old, I never had a fight with a board or anybody about community outreach.
Right.
That's what we got to do. That's what we got to do.
You remember there was a time where we did a survey. We surveyed the membership, and we asked the question, how did you first hear about Sweet Holy Spirit? And maybe 17 to 22% said, I saw him on the news. You know, and it is those things that we're trying to get other churches to learn. That's how you grow your church as well. You know, we want people to be fishers of men, but we also want people to turn on the TV and say, hey, they're doing a good work. And I think you, Meeks, Flavor, and now others have kind of capitalized on that.
I throw one name out to you, because since you mentioned that. You remember Rick Party?
Yeah.
From GCI? So I ran into him in Houston. We talked and fellowship. But what he said to me was, Bishop, are you still doing community stuff? Because I'd like to be a part of it. And I can't call the name of the station that he does simulcast here, but lives in Georgia. And he was saying, I need to give to somebody who gives back. And I'm like, Rick Party, I remember when he joined here.
Yeah.
And I remember the 107.5 and 102.3, you know, all of the stuff we dealt with.
A lot of those radio personalities either were members here or they visited here a lot.
Yeah, Marv Dyson, who was over that whole thing.
Bonnie Deshawn.
Bonnie Deshawn was a member here. And they kept our story alive. And I think preachers now have to develop a coalition of people in the church and outside the church to keep their ministry and stories alive.
And your sense of humor helped along the way, because while others may have been offended with Tony Schofield at GCI took a crack at you on the radio, and he ended up sitting here on the front row of the church, apologized, and you guys had a great relationship. I know Damon Williams, he used you in many of his sketches out throughout the country. You've had a good sense of humor as it relates to the evolvement of the church, whereas others got stuck in tradition and became offended over things that really weren't offensive. And I think you went a long way in getting other pastors to be able to embrace church comedy. You know, because church comedy is a multi-million-dollar industry within itself, and a lot of that you allowed here on this pulpit, and I applaud you for that. As we close this particular segment, and once again to our viewers, this is probably one of 3 segments that you'll see. We know there are a lot of families in Sweet Holy Spirit. There are a lot of personalities say, hey, my name didn't get included. Trust me, over these next few segments, you'll hear a name that you're familiar with, but we want you to look directly into this particular camera, Bishop, your camera, and talk to the members, current and past, that have helped you along this way to evolve this brand called Sweet Holy Spirit Church of Chicago, formerly Sweet Holy Spirit Missionary Baptist Church, then Sweet Holy Spirit Full Gospel Baptist Church, but now the Sweet Holy Spirit Church of Chicago.
I want to say to the people that may be viewing that I do understand that none of what we've talked about and none of what we will talk about could have been done without you. No pastor, bishop, apostle, leader is any greater than the followers. And so I thank you. If you played a part, the Laughlin Street Church, 103rd Street Church, One Church, 2 locations, 87th Street Church, and all of the places beyond that we've been to, I thank you because you played a part. And I know that Sweet Holy is still in your heart, and some of you come back when we have the reunions and those kind of things. But you should take pride in celebrating 50 years as an organized church. God brought us together. Whatever time you spend here, and you that are still here spending time, God brought us to the kingdom for such a time as this.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you, sir.
Situation, God's got you covered. It's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright. Heartaches and pain, God knows your name. It's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright. Don't worry. I wish I had some church folk here.